Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for coming to join us, our MarkLogic community event here in November. We're really looking forward to today's event. The first thing I just want to recap on, we've been running these events now since I think May, and it's been fantastic. We've had some really positive feedback from everybody, and we've had some fantastic presentations across the board. All of these people have presented. We're all very thankful for what they've done for us this year. If you want to go back and see any of the presentations that we've given over this year, please do take a look at these QR codes. You're welcome to take a screenshot now and jump to those, or the recording of this video will go out to everyone that's registered. So you'll be able to go back and see those QR codes from there. Or of course, you can go to our YouTube channel, just search for MarkLogic in YouTube, and we've got all our presentations on there as well. You can also please go along to our community site, recently launched community.progress.com. You can go into the product hub and select MarkLogic from there. All of the information about the communities, all of the events that we do, all of the latest releases are all detailed on the community hub. And there's also a forum on there where you can talk to other customers, and various people from MarkLogic are reviewing those and answering questions as well. So if you haven't already done it, please do sign up at the community hub and take a look at that. Right, today's event. I'm really looking forward to today's event. A while back when we started talking about these community events, one of the things we decided we wanted to do was focus on some of the technology in MarkLogic that people were either aware of or perhaps they've forgotten is available. And one of the first things we wanted to look at was geospatial. So today's event all has a theme around our geospatial capabilities. And we start off with David and Maritz from Clever Llamas, who are going to give us an overview of the features of geospatial in MarkLogic and give you some inspiration about the kind of things that you can do. Then we're really excited to have Jan Case from Sensing Clues join us. They're going to talk about how they're using MarkLogic to actually protect wildlife and habitats around the world, and what they do with our geospatial capabilities. And then I'm really excited to show you MarkLogic Fast Track. We've got Christian and Mitch online. They're going to give the first public demo of MarkLogic Fast Track, which is gearing for release in 2024. So it should be a really good session, and we'll start with our first presenters. So David and Maritz, it's over to you guys at Clever Llamas.
Thank you, James. So my name is Maurits Veenman. I'm here today with David Ennis. As said, we're from Clever Llamas, and our goal is to use our experience to enlighten, educate, and empower companies and individuals with their use cases on MarkLogic solutions. Today, we're here to talk about getting more out of your geospatial data. We were asked to give a demo based on our experience. Well, David Ennis, as you can see, has a history with geospatial data sets since 1989. And also has been reviewing the new features on MarkLogic 11. I myself have been reviewing the geospatial features on the early access version of MarkLogic 9 when they were first introduced, and also have been reviewing them on MarkLogic 11. Today on the agenda, we have basically nothing more than just to inform you on the available features and the available items that are currently in MarkLogic, and also have a few use cases to inspire you on how to use them and what can be done with them. So with that, I think, David, on to you to look at some of the available technology.
Okay, thank you, Mark, and thank you for Progress and James for inviting us here, and all the others. So basically, not a lot of time, very little bit of time, and the agenda is very short. Inform and inspire. So we're going to start with going through some of the features that are within MarkLogic. Very small set of slides that we would otherwise use for training, and then we actually took some time to go in and think of some of the use cases that you could do with MarkLogic, and from there move on to some samples that we put together. So the first part here, I'm actually going to drive through the features as a whole, just basically a mini overview, mini training of what is in with MarkLogic. So within MarkLogic, on the geospatial side of things, you have lots of different types of geospatial regions that you can actually use for geospatial queries: boxes, polygons, complex polygons, line strings, circles, all the standard set that you would expect for some sort of mapping solutions, GIS solutions. Within that, you also have the ability to query against those objects, things that are containing other things that are contained by other things. Disjoint equals things that intersect, they overlap, they touch. So again, a whole set of items that you would want to query. A region against a region, a point against a region, all of those. So within MarkLogic, you have a full set, and they're standard. And so whether you know MarkLogic or not, or you have someone working with you that knows geospatial, other geospatial solutions, these features would be the same regardless of what solution you're using. So industry standard, best, well understood types of queries that you can do against geospatial features. In MarkLogic, actually, there's a few different coordinate systems that you can use. So you have what you'd expect, a WGS84, which is basically a well-known standard on the Earth itself, so geodetic. You also have ETRS89, which is a European standard that's also used. And for other solutions, you may actually find that you want to go with a raw or a plain geospatial coordinate system. As in this case here, MarkLogic, it's an XY system, but everything within MarkLogic understands that. So on anything that's on a sphere, as you get closer to the poles, things are closer together in one direction. And on the plane, if you're using raw, all the coordinate systems understand that you're in a straight line. So there's lots of details in there, but it's not for this call. But basically, this is what it covers: projecting flat things, things on a flat area, and that go out linear X and Y directions, or on the sphere itself. So that's what you have within that. So you have benefit of both depending on your use cases. Accuracy within MarkLogic is a really interesting one. So the standard accuracy within about a 1 meter accuracy is what most people would use. Within MarkLogic, I think they even use a floating point number for that because there's no reason to go in any more detail on that respect. But then you have double precision, so sub-meter accuracy. There's a couple of use cases in the past that I've worked with that's actually very close locations of assets that belong to a city. And actually goes into some of the items that are on this list. But there's other use cases that you may have if you happen to store stuff within MarkLogic that's within a building, as an example. So within a meter or sub-meter accuracy, depending on your use case. An interesting point I'll go into very clearly here is that you can actually have something that has double precision in its data itself. You might actually have double precision, but decide you only need to index single precision. So you don't even have to, you can store really detailed locations and maybe decide not to index them to that level as well. So you don't use resources that you don't need. And some of that can also be done on query time, depending on what's going on. Within MarkLogic, everything can be stored in XML elements, XML attributes, JSON properties. Depending on what you're storing, it can be in different places. And within that, there's two formats that are within MarkLogic that allows a CTS serialized regions and points, and then also what many people would also know as well-known text. That's out of the boxes. There's some nuances in all of those and some overlap of other stuff that is supported out of the box. But you don't have to really worry about that because as you get into MarkLogic, the toolbox, when they got into this, they created quite a few tools. These came out in MarkLogic 9 and got advanced over the time. And so really, although the native indexing that it does is on what I gave on the other two slides, there's actually a whole set of tools that allow you to transform to and from quite a few standards that are out there. So even if you have some form that is not directly indexable within MarkLogic, you have the ability to convert that as well. So how do you access geospatial information in MarkLogic? Well, just like everything that MarkLogic tries to do, everything is on some foundational layer. So because it's all on indexes like everything else and not something that bolted on the side, then you can use the search APIs, the server-side ones, the JSearch, Node.js, Java, all the REST APIs on that. In fact, because of their indexes are standard, you can even use the REST management API to configure these things as you want. And as we get further on, there's also quite interesting things recently with the Optic API. So geospatial indexes, first-class citizen MarkLogic, therefore they're wired into all of the normal things that you'd be comfortable and used to within MarkLogic. So I'm going to go into the indexes very quickly. So just like you do any other range index in MarkLogic or do various queries, If you put stuff in a document in MarkLogic, whether it be JSON or XML, you can define indexes the same way you define any other indexes. As is always the case in MarkLogic, though, if you do that, you have indexes that are, when you do a query, queries resolve to a fragment. So it is sometimes in a situation here, I might need to put these two entries here into two separate documents in order to query back. Because if I want to find out which of these two llamas, that's part of a larger use case I'll tell later, which one I'm closer to, I'd want them in separate documents. Otherwise, I'd have to do post-query filtering and things of that sort. So standard way of MarkLogic, everyone will be used to range indexes of certain types in documents and query against them. But if you have more than one of those items in your document, you don't know which one you matched unless you do further processing. And that's where we enter in MarkLogic 11, where for many years now, I think there's been the ability to index content within MarkLogic on the fly, basically. Sorry, not on the fly, by way of extracting data into from templates into rows. And in this case here, this was added in MarkLogic 11, and it now allows us to extract multiple records from a single document. And within there, you'll find the exact same set of tooling, or the exact same set of geospatial features available. And that extends things that you can actually query through Sparkle, SQL, and Optic API. We do have a large article written on that we can that I can talk about later on if we have time. Otherwise, but here we go. On the left-hand side, you see that I have many geospatial features in this document. Again, this comes from a larger demonstration that we did. By way of a template, I'm actually to extract them into individual records and query them separately. So now you have geospatial pretty much as a standard feature within the TDE world. And it's not just Optic, because actually all of those are also available in SQL. So you can actually do geospatial queries using SQL because they've extended those the operators into the geospatial operators into the SQL language as well. So in a nutshell, on this part that we just talked about, it's interesting to see that you should step back and think, well, geospatial queries related to space and location and things of that sort, you treat it the same way. It's like any other data in MarkLogic. You need to find, for embedded, you need to find what data you have in a format that you can index, apply the appropriate indexes, and query it through the appropriate APIs. And the same with any other data that you put into a TDE template that you're extracting from somewhere. Identify it, make sure it's in the right format, and then set the correct data type, just like you would with an int or a date time or anything else, and then query it. So again, because it's built in foundational in the indexes in MarkLogic, it should feel anyone that wants to extend what they have in MarkLogic already and add geospatial capabilities, it should feel very, very familiar to you because it's treated pretty much the same way. Now, quickly here before we go on, is where do you get geocoding data? Well, it's pretty much everywhere. I mean, there's very few places that industries that you can't find data somewhere in some place. Addresses, you can do addresses, postal codes, a lot of data that you may already have. Data services out there to enhance and enrich your information are available around the world, some free, some paid, a lot of government stuff that's free, depending on where you are. Images we'll talk about later, and I've done quite a few projects in the past using social media streams with some geocode information for various projects as well. So this is just a quick list, but just think of the data that you have, and I think somewhere in there you would likely be able to find something that you can reference back to a location. I'm going to pass this over to Marit now, who's just going to describe what we did next as far as the Inspire time.
Yeah. So as from the experience with our clients, with our various clients, we prepared a few examples, like David just mentioned. There's many places where you can find geodata or some sort of location data. So in the preparation for this presentation, we sat down, we thought about a few example cases, and most of them are based on some different industries, some different practices or difficulties that we could think of that they might have. And those concepts and use cases that we thought of are basically meant to make these concepts that David just explained a little more tangible. Like we've done before, we decided to wrap these into a small sample application. This also allowed us to better visualize each use case to make them a bit more visual than just the words that we just looked at. And for the demo app, we created a web application on top of MarkLogic. And in this case, we used React, Leaflet, and Mapbox. And the data obviously coming from MarkLogic. So with that, I think, David, you can walk us through some of these examples.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Yeah, I'm going to drive this home in about 4 or 5 minutes. So it's going to be pretty much a whirlwind tour here, but you know where to find us if it's if we're going a bit too fast with some of this. First industry we looked at, insurance. This is something that I've worked at off and on throughout the years. And something that you can do with insurance is tracking assets, finding out higher areas where there's a high number of accidents, things of that sort. A big one that I've worked on off and on is tracking against storm data. Hailstorms, predicting of where hail is, where there may be more accidents. Wind cones in advance of, say, a hurricane to see where your high value properties may end up being at risk. So you might send someone up to do some prep work, or you just might be prepared for what will happen afterwards. So we put this one together very quickly. And then on this side here, this is some of the data we put in the system. It's interesting, the wind cone data this time actually from from the United States. It's the first time that I found it in KML. Usually it's text data that I have to extract and process, but there are tools out there for that. Against some of our standard data that we use for different purposes. And the data on the right-hand side, we geocoded just the postal code. So in that, we actually turned that into an application that showed us where high-value properties or assets may actually be in the way of an oncoming storm. Data from within an organization, the locations of your assets, and then also data, freely available data about an impending storm. Want to point out now, it's around the world that's different in different places. In Europe, for instance, through Media Alarm, you actually get a different approach. You get the ability to have RSS feeds that have a location code, and all of the countries that participate in this have cut their countries into little tiny pieces. So instead of cones, you actually already have a set of polygons that actually match small regions, and so you get these alerts. This is actually an alert for where I live now, and we are getting ice and everything around us now. And it's supposed to snow in a while. And so that's just pointing out that in this case, rather than storm cones across Europe, for instance, you have predetermined polygons because that's a good enough size to worry about a storm or something like that. Images, I want to point out this one here. The amount of information that's available in images is pretty plentiful. And luckily within MarkLogic, if on the right-hand side, you can extract that data. And in this use case, it's actually related to agriculture, but it could be applied to anything for which you would have images or need images or take photos, because pretty much every camera now has the ability to geocode data. So in this case here, we extracted geolocation data from crop information. And this is some tulips here in the Netherlands. In this case here, the next thing was to go into an analysis on the amount of ground that can be seen in the brown in this case here. And our sample here was about seeing where we had crops that still had a lot of brown, so they're not ready to pick. For instance, we were looking for white or brown in this case here, and then plot those and find out where things are ready. But the important thing here is about extracting the data from the images. I didn't have to do anything else except put it into MarkLogic document filter, 140 or so different formats, and it nicely just took the geospatial data directly from the image for us. Pharma and healthcare. I'm not going to go into much of this because I'm mindful of time. I also, there's so many parts in here. It's not new. Using mapping data and relating disease and things of that sort to the environment around us has been happening for 180 years. First use case that people know of. In this one here, I would just suggest that people look at things like the WhoGIS website for inspiration on things that can be done around here. You'll see things related to COVID. You'll see things related to ensuring that vaccines are reaching the most vulnerable people in rural areas, things of that sort. So quite a few choices there. And again, but to try to make true, I actually went through and took and found a set of information related to radon levels in an area, and for which you could then map that the higher radon levels to patients in an area. I didn't put the colors on here because I didn't actually want to expose this because this was public available data, but it did actually show houses with high radon. Alerting systems within MarkLogic. In this case here, MarkLogic has reverse queries and things of that sort within it, and so with different ways you can take content that's coming into MarkLogic. You can label it right away as a future thing, like something is now in a flood zone that wasn't before, because flood zones can change, or you may alert someone right away. So again, we did a real sample of this. This is actually based on the Dutch government, something that I'd done with them for some years back. And it's about alerting people of what's going on. And this is actually real planning information of current requests for planning for new buildings. And I found the buildings that were within an area of where I am. And that's a real use case for alerting system within MarkLogic and using a hybrid reverse query solution. Now think outside the box. We're talking about the fact that you have the plan, that you can just do stuff in raw, so in a plane as opposed to a sphere, and the high precision. And we actually just left this one more as an idea for people to look and see what might be possible. And in this case here, this is we didn't put one in this case on the live data because of time constraints, but you can now start thinking about tracking anything on a local thing. This type of item is actually good when you're using local coordinate systems from your local government, for instance, which may be used for planning. One last note that I'll make here is, don't forget about the importance and availability of elevation data that's available now. It's been around for quite some time. There's around the world of stuff. There's more LiDAR data that's around these days. That's a type of light-related radar, I guess is a quick way to say it. There's the SRTM data that's been around since 2013. So if you have height information in geospatial data, then you're actually able to either include or exclude items like that. And actually, the slide on the stuff on the left-hand side is from shuttle radar data, and that's actually where I was doing something analysis before in France on vineyards and the height of the vineyards from the earth. So elevation data is another one that's a total different angle on that as well. So on that one there, the last one I'm going to say with my last 12 seconds is temporal. Everything within MarkLogic, you can have temporal data. So in this case here, as the storm moves across the northeast of the United States, you can query this at one time. You can essentially treat this as one polygon if you wanted to, because if you put your data in as temporal data, then you could actually query where was the storm today, where will it be tomorrow, et cetera, from different records that you have. And in a nutshell, in 19 minutes and 50 seconds, that is our quick summary and hopefully some inspiration for everyone of what you can do within MarkLogic with geospatial. I hope we hit the brief, we informed, and we inspired. And with that, I'm happy to turn this back over to James.
Fantastic, guys. Thank you. That was amazing, really interesting. And I think one of the really interesting things for me is it doesn't matter what business you're in, what data set you've probably got some geo data in there somewhere. And I think this just gave you an idea of some of the breadth of things that can be done in MarkLogic. And it doesn't have to be that scary. You know, there's plenty of good information online. We've got Clever Llamas and many of our other partners who will certainly help you make sense of that geo data and turn it into practical applications. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate that. And with that, I would like to hand over to Jan Kees from Sensing Clues, who's actually going to show the real world implication of all of these features. Jan Kees, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me. I'm Jan Kees, founder of Sensing Clues, and we are a non-profit organization focused on nature conservation and wildlife protection. And what we see is that people struggle with data. And there's more and more data. There's data from satellites, from trackers, from animal trackers, from people in the field that observe things, from camera traps that make images of passing animals. And so I can continue with quite a lot of other information. And it's growing and growing. And nature conservation organizations are often not really equipped to deal with all the data and turn that into actionable information. And when I call it actionable, I mean it should be for the right person in the right time, having the right content, inform the people about the right things in a way that they can comprehend it. So that is why I founded Sensing Clues about 7 years ago. and it's our mission to turn the wild spaces that are out there into safe havens for people and for the animals. And by that, the most modern technologies. And the most modern technology that we are using is, of course, the MarkLogic environments. We are doing that across the world in many different situations. We are supporting, by the end of last year, we were supporting more than 300 ranger teams. The team usually consists of 4 to 8 people, and they are in the field to protect wildlife against poaching, but also sometimes to protect people against human-wildlife conflicts, like an elephant that stumbles in your village, or in Southern Europe, bears that also walk into the village and might eat your chicken or your dog. Of course, also biodiversity monitoring, a very important theme, and also community work, because in almost every situation, nature and people are living together, and that brings frictions and things to be managed. And having a keen eye on what's happening in the field and how to respond, you need a very good system. So the model that we developed, I call it the Sensiclues can-do model, is multimodal, multi-data model also, because it has a document store, it has a triple store where the semantics are being organized, and we have the geo store. And together we can actually answer almost any question. Everything in our field has a lot long and a date. So everything has a time and a place. And that's, of course, maybe not typical to our situation. You will also find it in law enforcement or in the military sphere. Anyone actually that works outside in the society is always interested in where and when. And after that, of course, also the what and who is involved and what could be the damage, etc. So by having this model, we can actually digest and ingest and process any type of data source, all the ones I mentioned, from satellites all the way to map layers, to observations from citizen scientists, from rangers in the field, from camera traps, etc. And we enrich that through an ontology. So the semantics allow us to combine information from different sources that use their own labels for things. And we can combine that with alt labels and close matching labels in an ontology, which we use to put an envelope across every data element that we get. And then we have search indexes that allow us to find and search for the triples, for the geospatial, and of course also for the full documents. And that is very, very powerful. What you see here is an application that I wanted to have when I was working at the National Command Center of the Dutch Police in the Netherlands. And we didn't have a tool like this, so I started working with MarkLogic at that time to develop it. And this was a kind of outcome that I brought into nature conservation also. So what you see on the left hand is that you have a taxonomy of any type of thing that you could stumble across in the field. And for information, that list has more than 1,000 elements. And rather than let's say the more traditional technologies who are developing one map layer and another, which is a lot of work and often not complete, here we render and create these layers automatically. And we also show how many data points are there within each layer. So charcoaling, for example, in this time frame, there's only 2 incidents in this time frame. But if I use the time frame that you see above, I can also specify the time range, like it's today, or I want to see everything from the last year or 10 years. And I can search it through the topics, through the time, but also through the map. So the map is also an active search filter. If I zoom in, then I only get the results from that particular area. And on the right-hand side, you've got your results. I can see it, of course, on the map, but also on the right-hand side. And if I open that, I get access to the actual documents. So if I made a photo with EXIF or anything else, then I see this photo and I can consult whether the information that was stored there is useful and can be used. So actionable here means that if I know the what and the who, then I know kind of what's the problem. Like someone killed a zebra or a poached an elephant. Of course, that's a problem. I know what happened and I know who was affected, but I want to know where and when it happened, because then I can start predicting, and then I can become more proactive. If I then also learn from the data and the relations that I find in my knowledge graph, then I can also understand more how things have been done, the modus operandi, and maybe also why. Because people get interviewed and you've got a police record, and in that police record, you can find all the relations again about what was used, why it was used, etc. So this application, although it looks quite simple, and you can include, as you see, data sources and agents or exclude them, it's not yet matched anywhere. So I challenge everyone listening here to see if there's an application that can do all these things within seconds. I have never seen it yet anywhere. One of the nice things we are working on, and this is really, well, for someone like me, I'm also a scientist, this is really cutting edge, very, very exciting development, is that we create real-time radars. Like you've got a rain radar with prospects where the wind will go and where the storm will hit which kind of houses. We are developing this type of technology for prospecting where human-wildlife conflicts or where poaching incidents might happen in the next few hours, let's say 4 to 8 hours. And this is the one picture you see here is a crane radar. It predicts in real time where cranes are migrating, and if someone on the ground makes an observation of a flying crane or a flock of cranes, then the model starts calculating and ingesting information like where's the wind, what is the temperature, what is the average speeds of these animals, and we combine that with historic information, with landscape information, with the direction we think they will be heading, and make our prediction where the animals can be seen in the next few hours. So rather than like birders, many birders tell you, I saw this bird, but then if you go there and you take your binoculars, they're already gone. And now with this tool, you can actually see that maybe in an hour or two, they might fly across your house and you will see them. This is of course nice for birders, but more serious it is when we start predicting human-wildlife conflicts with bears and with elephants and poaching incident with rhinos, because of course there the consequences are very, very severe. So what you see on the left hand is a small levels, what we call data-driven management levels, which goes all the way from knowing what's happening in the area, mapping, to monitoring the changes and to predicting things kind of periodically. But those real-time predictions are really the cutting edge. And in the future, we want to extend that to scenario-based projections, like what would or could happen if we are going to build a road through this reserve, or if electric fences will be installed around the cattle. Will we then have more or less human-wildlife conflicts, or will biodiversity be increasing or decreasing? This is our latest and greatest, what I could show you. So having you all here is an opportunity to invite you. We are a foundation, non-profit, and we work with about 40 volunteers all the time. And those volunteers work on these solutions with us. They dedicate their skills, their time, their engineering skills. So if you feel, I like these types of challenges, I like to learn from them, but also translate my knowledge into solutions that make a difference in the world, in many different nature conservations across the world, then you can say hello at Sense Includes and we will have a chat. Thank you very much.
All right. Hello, folks. I'm Christian Ohlenborger. I'm a product manager here with MarkLogic. Today, I'll be going over how we arrived at developing a new product called Fast Track, and I will give you a little bit of a preview as to what is included in it. And also, we will show you an application that we build with Fast Track that features some geospatial capabilities as well. So most of you are familiar with MarkLogic. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. So I'm not going to belabor any of these slides too much, but other than to say, as a data platform organization, we focus on 3 key capabilities: connecting data, creating data, and consuming data. Connecting data not specific to any one product, but the vision at a wider sense. Being able to get data from any architecture or system is crucial for whatever platform deployment you may want, whether it's a data mesh, data lake, etc. Creating data, or creating knowledge as we like to think of it, is about, once your data is pulled into MarkLogic, how can you transform that into organizational knowledge? MarkLogic will enable you with fact extraction, metadata application. And consuming data, making life easier for your end users with informed searches of data applications that present context and fact-based intelligence. Aligning with this focus, we have built a robust portfolio of connectors that make accessing data that had otherwise been siloed and enable you to bring it into your MarkLogic data platform. We've spent a good part of this last year expanding our connector portfolio, and we see this as a great way to break down those silos and enable users who are comfortable using tools and protocols that they're familiar with to keep using them. Tool fatigue is real. We want to make sure that if you have users who are comfortable with Kafka or NiFi, they can keep doing that. They don't have to become MarkLogic experts to gain the benefits of MarkLogic. However, with all of that, most data exploration tools deal with one aspect of data at a time, which can really lead to mono data representations. You can really miss out on a lot. So we feel that complex, unstructured data needs more than just one standard tool to tell the complete story. And as we've seen in the field a lot, companies wind up building their own bespoke solution, but this can be quite the effort. With Fast Track, we'll provide a complete JavaScript UI component library that allows you to quickly build high-quality, high-performance responsive web apps that will abstract MarkLogic server and data interactions. Armed with Fast Track, a full-stack developer with minimal MarkLogic exposure will be able to build a multi-model, data-driven application for non-technical users. So specifically, what is Fast Track? It's a React UI toolkit for building these applications. As I mentioned, it connects quickly to MarkLogic and leverages the data directly. What's inside? We have a number of components that we call widgets. We have custom facets, we have dynamic filters, we have a multitude of different graphs, and we offer full semantic search. What's great is all the widgets that you apply to your applications will remain synchronized. So anything that, as you zoom in or zoom out, anything you facet on or filter, all of the widgets will see and react as well. We'll also be packaging some sample applications that will give you a blueprint on how you can build it for yourself. With MarkLogic, you've had the ability thus far to ingest and model your data, enrich it, and now Fast Track offers a new dimension in exploration and visualization. The North Star for our team, if you will, has been, we want to enable an organization to build an app that would have taken something along the lines of 3 years with 10 to 15 developers. We want to cut that down to about 6 months with, say, 3 developers. We have a little bit of internal evidence that we're going with as well. We reached out to one of our colleagues, Beth, who is already fully engaged working as a consultant, and we challenged her to build an app, and this is a quote from her. We think this is this example of the success a number of you will be able to experience with Fast Track. And so with that, I'm going to pass the floor to my colleague, Brian, who has gone ahead and built a geospatial application that we can show you.
All right. So thanks, Christian. So like Christian said, we took the internal beta version of Fast Track and put a little demo together here. So what you can see on the screen is 5 different widgets that are going to work together to tell a little story and stay in sync with each other. So you see we have some search filters up here and a network graph with a map overlay and a timeline. The story that we have prepared is a law enforcement scenario where we have a stolen vehicle with some events that we know are related to that stolen vehicle, and we're looking to find more information about where it might have gone, what they might have done with the car, things like that. So we can see these blue dots with arrows connecting them. Those are stored in MarkLogic as related events. So we've got the connections there with a graph. The red and yellow dots are also stored in MarkLogic as all of the other various crimes with their locations and their times, so shown both up here and down in our timeline. So we can start to look for things that might be related. So using our geospatial query capabilities, we create a query that has a point and radius around each one of the known situations. And we can change our distance, that radius around, to maybe get a tighter view of what is being displayed to us, to kind of get a tighter area, less information to have to sift through. We can do the same thing with time, to decrease how many minutes around these different points on the timeline. And all of those get ANDed together, and the results get synced back into the map and the timeline. So another thing that we can do interacting with both the timeline and the map is we can zoom in on the timeline, and we can have them work together to fade out things that are no longer relevant. So we can see that in this time, these two right here, this trespassing call and drive-by, are the ones that are within our time range and also within this tight geographic circle. So let's pull it back. Another thing that we can add on, so we were talking about a little bit about the multi-model search, being able to do a lot of different kinds of queries. So in addition to these geospatials, we can filter it even further with a text search. We know that the vehicle that was stolen was a tan sedan, so we can add that into our search, and we can look at this and see some information about a drive-by that involved a tan four-door sedan. So as you can see, we built this thing pretty quickly with some random data, but it does show the power of both MarkLogic and Fast Track with all of the different components working together, syncing their data across, and being able to really help an end user get the best value out of MarkLogic and the data that they have stored there. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Brian.
Cheers, Brian. Thank you very much. Thank you, Christian, as well. I'm going to go into the Q&A next. If everybody wants to turn on their cameras and show everybody their smiley faces, so we can see who we're talking to, that would be great. There we go. Look at that. Everybody's coming to life. Right. Well, I'm going to start off with a question from myself. If we could get that next poll up, that'd be great. I'd like to ask Yankees a question, because it appeared to me that you could do an awful lot, even on top of what you've already done with that. Looking at sort of image analytics and things like that, where you can show what the animal is in the photo. So you could have almost democratize the ability to identify these animals and their movements to people who don't even know what the animal looks like. They can just take a picture and think, okay, I think that's a rhino, actually it's a hippo, or vice versa, or whatever it might be. Is that something that you're considering to do and bring into MarkLogic there?
Yes, we work with all different types of information sources. So the platform is really enabling us to do all these types of tricks. Our specialization is on working with the outcome of all these algorithms. So there could be sound sensors, there could be AI identifying species on images. Those are things that we work closely with. But our core is to do what I call the logistics of the data, making sure that all the data flows fast, is findable, is analyzable, and results in that we can use these kinds of observations, because it's just another observation, to make predictions for the near future, for the next few hours. So knowing what's on the image is not our specialty, but there are many out there that have them on the edge often, like AI on edge is already looking at images and forecasting a little bit what's on it, how many animals are on it. We are incorporating that information into the platform, including the photo, of course, because people want to verify, is this truly what we thought? Is it a hippo or a rhino? Not many people will make that type of mistake, but
You never know.
You never know. You never know.
No, it's just interesting, isn't it? Because you're able to take all these different types of data. It doesn't really matter because you've got MarkLogic underneath. It's able to take that data and incorporate it into one tool. That's fantastic to see. So yeah, that's really good. James, you look like you had a question there for Yankees or not? No.
Nope.
Go on.
I have questions, but you go for it first. Let's hear from customers.
No problem. Yankees, where do you want people to spend their time if you call, because you put a call out for developers, for architects, for engineers to come and help you? Is there any area where in our customer base where you might be seeing this and you want to volunteer your time? Any area that you would really love support and help on?
Well, we do have a fantastic platform with lots of different data sources, which are potentially a wealth of information for people in the field. And we are working very hard to translate that wealth into products that are useful in the field. But there's always, I'm never going fast enough. I've got a long list of applications and analytical questions that need to be translated into code, into visualization, into ways that people can easily understand what this prediction means. And there are so many topics. I mean, it's not only about poaching, it's also about charcoaling, about illegal logging, about waste pollution, about illegal motor crossing. The sky is the limit in the number of problems that can be addressed. Monitoring biodiversity is also a huge field, and conducting the proper analytics, building the right routines to analyze the data and present it to people anyone who is challenged by that is welcome to join the team.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, like I say, it's hello@sensingclues.com if I remember the email correctly. I just want to make sure that we get that into the webinar there again. I've got one last question for Mitch, actually. I'm going to ask the perennial question, which was not mentioned in that presentation. But when can we get a hold of these exciting new tools that you guys are going to release in MarkLogic Fast Track? I can see Yankees nodding his head, going, yes, I would like to see those as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We are working on wrapping up some internal betas right now and putting some finishing touches on the product. We are tentative to be looking to release early in 2024, ballpark February timeframe. However, that is tentative and will be more solidified as we get closer to that date.
I'll lift up the sign that says subject to change.
There you go.
One quick question for me to the Clever Llamas team. What's the sort of most common use of geospatial you've seen? Obviously, we've got customers in lots of verticals. To me, that idea of being able to search and see where those points appear on the map is really cool. But what are the kind of most common use cases that you've been asked to implement? You're on mute, just so you know.
Not anymore, I think. I think most are just address information. That's the most common one, of course, to implement. we did see some of, like David mentioned, social media, something that we did quite a bit with over time, just see where certain hotspots are. So where does a particular type of comment or a particular type of interest come from? That has diminished a little bit, I think, over the last years when people are not necessarily sharing all their location information anymore. But yeah, I think mostly those types are what we've implemented. Not sure, David, you get any other? You're on mute, I think. So.
Yeah, can you?
No, we don't.
There,
David.
It says I'm on. Can you hear me now?
Yep, you're on now.
Yeah, we can
Okay.
hear now.
I've had a little green dot up there. I thought it was correct. Yeah. So over the years within MarkLogic itself, for certainly insurance, that's actually the first use cases that I had. Probably 4 or 5 years ago, including self-healing systems that when you got new information, it would update the existing information. So if a person moved, it would immediately find out whether or not the new address had go back and look at the geospatial data. So for me, just the insurance industry for sure on so many levels within that. Other projects in the past actually had to do also with marketing. Oddly enough, some of the other MarkLogic clients with marketing and doing analysis around where your clients are and things of that sort within there. And then, of course, quite a bit here within part of the government for which in the country that I'm living now, which is alerting systems. That's real-time alerting. Was what we were building at the time. I've not been involved for a couple of years, but that extensively used it. Lots of different data within the system, and to an extension of that, actually within publishing and law, because it's in some countries now, if you have a law that refers to a location, you must actually link that location data in. So there are some countries. This has come up actually now, and it's come up in 3 different places for which I've worked on law data in XML. With MarkLogic. One place I know it's totally implemented where there's actually geospatial data linked to the actual published laws. An example, there's a dog park. You can no longer say there's a dog park between this street and that street. You say there's a dog park and here's the registered coordinates. And so when that information is put in place and that's an official dog park, for instance, it's linked directly to geospatial data. That's a link between 2 different government organizations, for instance. And also the last thing is it's untapped. I mean, I think it's just one of those things where it came out, it came out for specific purposes. I'd say likely some of the bigger US clients for MarkLogic, I think is where it probably came in. And then I think it just somehow has not actually come on to the level that it could or should. I think it's that's my last point, James, is not enough places that it could be used.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and that's sort of the point of today's session, is to raise awareness. And it is a core part of the application for those of you that have got MarkLogic. Most of the geospatial features are available out of the box. There are some advanced features, which is optional, but there's core features in the box available to you today. And one other thing we didn't get a chance to touch on today is Semaphore as well. So Semaphore obviously can analyze documents and look for knowledge in documents, and it can look for these kind of things and pull that data out. So if you've got shipping forms or delivery information or reports with locations in, that's all kind of stuff that we can handle too.
Yeah. And I think in the Yankees world, maybe in others, wildfire and sort of geological or weather events, which I think are going to become more and more prevalent. Having geospatial data, being able to do forecasted warnings to people, that type of thing, I think can be really good, especially for local government or local emergency services. So yeah, just another use of geospatial on top of the litany that we've just listed.
Yeah, there's another one which I did not mention, but wildfires is a big problem also in Southern Europe. And some insurance companies, they want people to clear the gardens around their house. So for a few days, there are satellites passing by that can be analyzed to see whether indeed the vegetation around these houses is short, so that if there's a fire, that these houses are safe. And if not, then you can send someone to visit them and to clear the vegetation to protect the house. So it's also giving you information to kind of safety, I call it, safety, security, protection, prevention, which is very useful field.
Yeah. Yeah, like I say, I think it's like David mentioned there. I think it's an untapped resource within the platform, especially as it's at the core. Well, that's it from me. I don't have any other questions. Anybody have any other questions for any of the speakers now? No. All right. Well, look. Thank you, everyone. Oh, go on, Jose.
I was going to do the same as you, Phil. I was just going to say a big thank you to all our presenters for their time today.
Yeah, no, it really is really appreciated. Not just yourselves, but everyone that's presented on our first sort of 6 months, 6 to 7 months of the community events now. Please do check out the MarkLogic Progress community. You will get access to all of these on-demand recordings, but there's also a whole host of other information on there that we post, and we encourage you to post as well. Ask your questions of the community and get some expert responses from our engineering team and developers, but also from the community themselves. So please feel free to join that and subscribe to the MarkLogic forum to get those notifications.
Thank you everyone for your time.
And we'll see you in January.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.